Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to talk about everything charter related. I'm going to answer all your questions. What is a charter? What is it used for? Who creates it? How do you create it? And what do you do with it? So stick around for everything you need to know about Project Charter. What is a Project Charter and why it is even needed? Well, according to PMI, which is the Project Management Institute, which is a globally recognized association for the project management profession, the definition of a project charter is a document that formally authorizes the existence of a project, and it gives the project manager the authority to apply resources to the project. So the way I look at it, it's really the blueprint to the project. It's your guiding principles for the entire project. Now, when is it done and is it required? Absolutely, the one artifact that is required for your project is the project charter. It is the foundation that cannot go without. When is it done? At the beginning of the project, during the initiation phase of your project life cycle. Later in another video, we'll talk about the project life cycle, but the first one is initiation. If you started a project midway through and you stepped into the project when it was already in flight, the first thing you want to do is to see if there is a charter in place. If not, put one together, even if the project has already started. So here's a $1 million question: what goes into the project charter? I'm going to list them out and then I'm going to go back and explain each one of them, what they are. Project overview, scope, deliverables, timeline and milestones, budget, project team, stakeholders, their roles and responsibilities, constraints and assumptions and dependencies, and risks. Starting with project overview, that's your project vision, your goals and objectives. What problem are you trying to solve? Giving a background of what this project is, what is it trying to accomplish? Project scope. What's in and out of scope? What does the project include? What does it not include? Those are the boundaries of the project. Project deliverables. What you're trying to accomplish with the project. What are you delivering? And these can be in forms of the tool or process that you're putting out as a result of the project, and maybe the supporting material. If you're conducting training or providing documentation that support what you're delivering, those are the types of deliverables that are identified. The resulting product of this project. Project timeline and milestones. Well, you haven't really started the planning process, so this is going to be high level, and you don't really have a realistic project schedule yet. However, your project sponsor probably has some time range in mind that they communicate with you. There might be an expectations in terms of we need to get this done this year or this first quarter of the year. Sometimes there is a constraint on the project because of a law or regulation going into effect on a certain date that therefore the project needs to get completed by, or there might be another dependency on the project starting on a certain date. So that kind of gives you the time range or the idea of when this project needs to occur. Further down, once you get into your planning phase, you're going to actually do some work in terms of identifying what is the realistic project timeline. But at charter level, you are putting in the high level. And then also you want to list out key milestones, and those are some major events that are happening within the project that the project team needs to know about. The start and end of the project are considered the major events, so those are considered key milestones, and then anything else in between. Budget. So when going into the project, or when the project is handed over to you, sometimes the budget is already set and it's already gone through its approval, and here's your project and here's the budget that you're working with. So that determines the starting budget. Sometimes the budget hasn't already been identified, so they're going to look to you to work with the sponsor or the project team to put the information that you need together that's going to come up with an estimate of what that project budget is. So that's the time that you are again tapping a little bit into planning for the project, but at a high level, what is required to get this project done. Stakeholders. Now, stakeholders are anybody and everybody who are affected by the project or have a stake in the project. Immediate project team and your sponsors are all considered as stakeholders. They might be internal or external to your organization. They might be responsible for a decision or providing funding. They might be affected negatively or positively. Or that they're, as a result of the project, their day-to-day job might change, or that they need to be made aware of certain aspects of the project. Any and all that are affected by the project are considered stakeholders that you need to have identified as much as possible at this stage of the process so you can do the proper communication and planning with. Project team and their roles and responsibilities. At this point in the project, you may already have an idea of who your project team is. If not, you're going to be working with your project sponsor and the management team to identify who those people are. These are people who are going to be responsible for day-to-day activities of doing a part of the project. You need to identify their names and what is their role, what role are they playing in the project, at what point in the project do they enter, and what are their responsibilities. Dependencies, constraints, and assumptions. Let's talk about each one of them. Dependencies. Now that's either an event or an activity that needs to complete for your project to be able to proceed and complete successfully. Now, assumptions. These are not facts, but rather understandings that you're assuming certain things about the project to be there when you're planning your project. Now, these down the road may end up becoming true or false, but right now at the beginning of the project, you want to put it all out there and make sure that the team and the sponsor are aligned and try to alleviate any kind of misunderstanding as much as possible. Constraints, those are the boundaries or limitations of the project that are already existing and you need to make the project team aware of to understand the limitations that they need to work within. And finally, risks. These are precautions you want to make sure that the project team is aware of while going into the project. Throughout the project, you're going to identify many other risks that you need to manage, but these are things that you already know and want to make sure that the team is monitoring and keeping track and ready and prepared to act on in case that the risk occurs and becomes an issue. Here's some tips on where to start putting all this information together and start developing your charter. So in some organization, the project that comes to you goes through a process of project request, whether they use a form or track it in a queue. Some of this information may already come with that as you collect requirements from the client in terms of what is it that they want you to do. Some of this information might be gathered through that process. If there isn't one, this is something that you need to sit with your project sponsor or your management team and basically go through the list that we just reviewed and try to collect as many information that is known to this point as possible. One tip to make sure that you're creating a consistent charter with the rest of the organization is find out if there is a template available. If there is one, definitely use it and make sure that it's consistently done the way that the rest of the organization puts together a charter. If not, use the list that we just went through and create your own. Just make sure that when you put the charter together, it is succinct, it is clear, and it is error-free. And also try to use as many visualization as possible. This helps keep the reader engaged and paying attention to the information that you're putting in the charter. Well, if you're doing a timeline, put a Gantt chart in there. Project team, you can create an org structure. For the budget, use a table. Any tools that can make that information more visual helps your audience in understanding and paying attention to the details. Now, who creates the project charter and who needs to review and approve it? Well, The charter is really a reflection of the sponsor's expectation, but it is a project management tool. So the sponsor may not necessarily know the structure of the documentation or the language. So typically the project manager helps put the project charter together while working with the project sponsor. However, at the end, the project sponsor is required to review and approve the charter, as it is the project sponsor's way of authorizing the project and handing it off to the PM to be able to go ahead and execute on it. Now that you have a project charter, how is it used? Once your project sponsor approves the charter, schedule some time with your project team to review the content of the charter. So make sure that your project team is aligned with all the expectations and the boundaries that are set within that charter. The information that's on the charter is helpful to prepare for your official project kickoff with the rest of the stakeholders. This is the basic information that everybody needs to know about what the objectives of the project are and who's involved in the project, what are the goals and objectives of the project, what are your timeline and expectations, and everybody's roles and responsibilities. While you're creating the project charter, you need to realize this is not just a document to prepare and then put it on the shelf somewhere. This is used throughout the project for any time there is any kind of dispute about the scope or the roles and responsibilities or the budget or the schedule. It is something that you reference often to be able to kind of bring everybody back in and make sure that you're tracking against those initial expectations. As much as possible, you want to make sure to maintain the integrity of the original project charter that was already signed off by your sponsor. But it's understandable that things change, but you want to make sure that you track those changes, and sometimes you have to challenge them by making everybody pause, think about it, put the justification into a project change request before submitting and changing. Throughout the project, there are many reasons that things change. Once you determine that those changes are valid, you need to make sure to present them in a form of a change request. In the future, I'll have videos on what change requests are. The change requests will need to be reviewed by the project sponsor and approved before you can make those fundamental changes to the original charter. Another place that you're going to be using the project charter is at the very end of the project, when you're in the closure phase. And again, we'll talk about the different phases of the project life cycle, but the very last phase of the project is the closing phase, where you'll be preparing a closing memo. In order to create that closing memo, you need to pull up the original intention of the project and everything that you had committed to upfront in the project charter, and review those and identify what has been completed and delivered as expected and what did not. Once you're done with the project charter and it's been approved, you are ready to start the planning phase. Thank you for sticking around. Hope you found this video helpful. If you're interested in any other topics, please make sure to leave a comment and make sure to subscribe to my channel so you can get alerted for my future videos. Thank you for watching.